Welcome to Definitely Maybe Agile, the podcast where Peter Madison and David Sherrock discuss the complexities of adopting new ways of working at scale. Hello, Dave. Good to see you again. And today we are joined by Hanna. So, Hanna, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello. Hi, Dave. Hi, Peter. Pleasure of being here. Thank you so much for having me. Hannah, obviously, from CEO from HEARTnomics. I'm a faculty member with Maxwell Leadership and also Six Sigma Black Belt. So I'm excited to be able to come in here and talk about organizational and digitation and all kinds of stuff that we're doing right now. Most importantly, the heart aspect. I believe in transformation through love and excellence. And that is leadership, really the glue that binds those two together. So I'm all about leadership, and I can't wait to have an organic, fun conversation with both of you about it.
We're looking forward to that, I think, in our sort of introductory conversation, just getting to know one another. It's interesting how much overlap there is, even though we're coming at it from often organizational change and it's driven by DevOps or Agile or some sort of digital transformation.
Yes.
But I also think we have that common understanding that it's the people that make a change happen.
Yes.
So maybe to start with, from that side, what brought you into working in organizations to drive change through that aspect of people-oriented change?
Well, I would love to say it was motivation, but it was more desperation. And that's because for us, it was like a perfect storm. So having been, we were in a business, a small business, and what I call back in the 2010, it was budget freeze, similar to what's happening right now in the US with the government shutdown. So our main customer being schools operating with government money. So basically, in a matter of weeks, the clients, the money that they had to buy our products was no longer available. So that was one. Income was uncertain. The second thing was the rise of the sudden change of standards, making basically our product obsolete the way it was and opening it up to a lot of competitors. We were in a niche market, and suddenly what the bigger publishing houses came into our market because now it was national standards. So we had to recreate, so we had to think fast in how are we going to be able to still bring the value to the market. And there was this other little thing called the ebooks that was starting to gain
Yeah.
some force back in 2010 where they declared the death of print. Well, us being 99.9% print, suddenly the way that we distributed our products, be again, not only people wanted this ebook, they didn't have the broadband to support the ebook. They didn't really have a way to even download the stuff. They didn't know what the content was. We didn't know what the business model even looked like. So the publishing houses at the time were experiencing what the media, basically the music industry had gone through before. So where did I come in with leadership? I had to get really good, really fast in accepting and embracing change, and then helping my people go through that, navigate a lot of uncertainty. We didn't know what the business model was going to look like. We didn't know when the money was going to come in again. And we really didn't know how long even the investment in producing new content, how long was that going to last with the consistent change in standards. So we had to become really fast and effective and efficient, innovate in a time where the income was going down and not really know where it was going to come from. So for me, leadership is what really was tested in that. And leadership comes in communication, comes in motivating your team, the way that really building culture. I realized that we didn't have the culture. I didn't know it at the time, but what was I missing was a really strong sense of what is our culture, us being confident in the value that we can bring to the market so that we can build from that. So I tried different processes and systems. I tried like, hey, what's the latest thing, the buzzword, right? What's happening? What's the next technology? What do we need to incorporate? What do we need to bring in here? And realizing that all those were good because I had to stay relevant with the market. But really what I needed to know is what was our core for both in talent and skills of our people, and really what was our vision and the value we wanted to bring, continue to bring to our clients in the future. And that's where leadership came in and change management and all the fun stuff that comes along with
Right.
it.
Awesome.
So once you, yeah, I love the story. I can definitely see that must have been a fairly chaotic and trying time as you
Yes.
worked through it. What as you came to that realization, what was it that sort of finally sort of made it stick? And
That there was no immediate relief. I mean, honestly, there was no, I knew that we needed to have some short-term wins, but we also needed to not, we did need some band-aids, but we needed long-term therapy, right? Like we needed something that was going to get us back to where we needed to go through. So that's when what I realized was, what were the short terms? What did we need to operate to still basically keep the core survival in essence? What did we need to survive? But also in that survival, while maintaining not necessarily what we were doing or what we were expecting, coming to terms with that this year was not going to look like the previous year. It was not going to look like what we had forecasted. It didn't mean it was the end. So getting back to that hope, actually, that's one of the lessons that I learned when at the very beginning of this, we had to start with layoffs. It's not how you want to start innovation and my new journey into change. And unfortunately, that was our reality. It wasn't just our reality. It was a lot of the reality of publishing home. Like a lot of publishing houses, they closed, they changed, big names, little names, a lot. There was just disruption, and it's what we call it the market. And what I realized was that I had allowed a lot of external circumstances, these unknowns, to start defining me or even start defining where we were going to go. I recall specifically this one time when I was going through our manufacturing facility where, no longer could hear the machines running. I could no longer, going through the sales room, the phones weren't ringing anymore. Yet I remember seeing one of our workers so involved in the work that he did. And then when he came to me, he reminded me by the comment that he did his excitement about his son being excited about using one of our books in his classroom, that he said that it was the first time that he had really felt proud of the work that he did. And when I heard him say that as a father, as someone who really, in essence, I was a leader, right? I was the one with the position. I was the one with the ability, decision-making ability. Yet he had the answer that I needed. He had the answer in one, why do we work and belonging to work? But most importantly, the hope. What was that hope that we needed to do? And I remember that so keenly in a very dark moment for me, a very dark moment for the industry, that it was like that aha moment. We need hope. Hope is not a thought, something that we just look at and like feel good or just positive vibes. Hope really is a catalyst for change. Is the catalyst that we build from. People with high hope will find a way where there is no way. Just like water, right? I mean, water finds a way and eventually water makes a way. So what made it stick was that what seeing through the eyes of all my employees, really not only the where that we still had a place in the marketplace, but really the hope that he had. And why did he work? Because I knew I was going to have to bank on that. I was going to have to tap into that with my entire team and starting with me to be able to then come up with solutions that we didn't quite yet have at that time.
A lot of when I'm hearing you describe the stories, you really capture the emotion of that moment very, very well, and I feel that that's something that it's in the HEARTnomics, the name of your enterprise as well, of course, but there's also there's something there which we sometimes forget in being in corporate environments, in a business, a professional environment where we want to be clear and articulate and professional, and sometimes we let go of that sort of the feelings and the emotions and the reasons why we're there, and I think that's just such a brilliant reminder for that.
Oh, no, it is huge because I mean, if you look at we talk about a lot of productivity and employees that are highly
Yeah.
productive, right? I mean, but we realize that is tightly knit with engagement. And when is an employee engaged? When they feel like they belong, when they have ownership, they're very much, it is an emotional thing. When you own something, you
Yeah,
very much
of
want to
course.
take
Yeah.
care of it, right?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of emotion, and we want that. I mean, because when we ask for solutions, when we're talking about dealing with the external customer, when giving the best service, we have to bring our entire selves. We can't say like, hey, leave your personal stuff out the door and just be professional. Like we have this dual thing, turn off, turn on. And yet we want our employees to give their best selves. Well, we can't when we're asking them to bring part of yourself here.
Yeah.
And that is one of the hard lessons I did learn. I mean, fast forward, I got really good with processes. I got really good with systems. I mean, I became a black belt in Six Sigma. I found a lot of help with that. I mean, we got the profits. We were able to come. It works.
Yeah.
But in the midst of that, I, as a leader, lost that touch of being in the heart of my employees. And I had to come back to that. And that's where my disc and my Zig Ziglar came in
Yeah.
because I had to relearn that. I mean, and that's something I think as leaders we forget because it is, of course, we have to be fiduciary responsible. Of course, we're looking at paying them. We want to stay afloat. We want to stay with the doors open. And this is, as a leader, I'm showing this 100% by making sure everybody gets paid every week. But it's not the only thing. It's of course it's the main thing. I mean, money is like oxygen to the business, right? There's no money, there's no business. But we can't in the recent just for that forget the people that we work with. And it really even starting with the leader themselves, because and that's what a lot that I do talk about is the burnout. Because we are making decisions, we are caring for a lot of people, and navigating in places we don't know, but we need to look at the person. And I had to learn that as a leader. Once I learned that, that's really what you're using is trust. That trust is what you need in order to be able to navigate change, especially when you don't know what that change is even going to look like. Because like for us, ebooks at that time, we didn't know what the business plan was for that.
Yeah.
Kind of like AI now, right? It's exciting, it's good. What is it going to look like, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? I mean, what is it? We're planning for a lot of places that we haven't gone. So we are going to need to have that trust of our people. And we can't have the trust if we don't know them and if we're not consistently investing in them.
Yeah, going to an AI and saying, "Here, write me a story." See what you get back, and
Hard.
the results may vary. So
Yeah.
it's fascinating. Like you say, one of the pieces you mentioned there was you were talking about how you mentioned that Lean Six Sigma and applying, which is effectively a data-driven way of looking at your organization and starting to reduce variance in the organization, which makes a lot of sense from the sounds of it. You've worked a lot in sort of an organization that's manufacturing or looking at that reduction in variance is very key, but that it took you away from the important parts of the organization and understanding the sort of the role that the people play. So when you saw that, what did you do to sort of course correct when you realized you weren't connecting as much with the people as you wanted to?
I had to humble myself. That was the first thing. The thing about, with Six Sigma, I mean, we use data, right? We turn qualitative data into quantitative data. We use the data to tell us a lot of things. And really what we're looking for in Six Sigma is we're looking for that 99.99999% accuracy, right? So in that, a lot of times what gets the praise could be the fact that, ooh, we found the defect or we found the mistake before it hit. So then in a sense, that's praise, which is good. It's good that we caught it. I mean, that's what we want. We want to catch it before the client catches it. But it shouldn't be the only times we celebrate. We gotta celebrate. We have to learn to celebrate all the other wins, all the times we did catch them, right? Because it might be, it felt like it started turning into a culture of finding the defects, of finding the critical stuff. So, and although Six Sigma is one of the things is to take away the blame game, unless you're also feeding the person and the people, it can easily turn into the blame game, or it can easily be turned into like the data. And in general, we have a lot of data. I mean, we live in the data era. I mean, there's nowhere you don't turn and there's not data. The question is, how is the data being used? And a lot of people are afraid of data because it's used as a punitive way, even with just employees with schools. So they don't want to see the data. And even when we have the data, we have a whole lot of stuff there that we may just not look at it. We have it, yay, but we're not really applying it. So for me, I had to start by humbling myself. I was losing my talent. I did a really good job in investing in my people. I did a good job in bringing everybody together. When you do Six Sigma, when you do Kaizen events, you have to do the entire organization. We did an entire transformation. You don't just do one part. I mean, you can, but it's not going to be sustainable, right? I mean, just like Agile, I mean, you have great technology teams that are doing the Agile, but then if you don't have finance or management doing that, whatever initiatives they have, it's going to be this constant tug of war or just we're at each other's places. So when you're talking about transformation, it may start somewhere, but you want it to expand to the entire organization. Well, in my case, that's what we did. We expanded to the entire organization. And so I invested in my people, but then my people started walking out the door still. So why were they leaving me? And I realized, and one particularly, this one of my leaders that I really thought, hey, this is the person that is gonna take this on. Like I can kind of step back and start looking at other things. And this was a person that turned in the resignation letter. And come to find out, he did a resignation letter not even to get a better, like higher paid job. It was actually he took a pay cut. And that to me, it's like I couldn't pay him enough to stay. He'd rather go somewhere else. And coming to terms and like, well, why? I mean, I have the processes, the systems. Hey, we made it through. I'm doing all of this stuff, me. And realizing that that's what it was. It was me. I was the one leading the agenda. I was the one leading the projects. I was the one leading all these things. And I wasn't making the time to listen to my people. I wasn't taking the time to really allow for there to be an environment where my very talented team could bring those ideas to the table, but also implement and integrate those ideas into our daily operations. So that's what I say. It took a humbleness, realizing like, hey, take a look at the mirror, take a look. And I had to get trained. I wasn't doing it on purpose. I mean, I wanted us all to win. I mean, I wanted everybody to have a job. I wanted people to get paid. But I had to realize there's things I needed to learn. I needed to learn desk. I needed to learn communication. I needed to learn not just, hey, I care for you. You're getting a paycheck and maybe we get a rewards and then one time a year, when you get your report, I'll say good things about you. I had to do it on a daily basis, especially in times of change.
Which is all the time now, of course. Times of change are permanently here, it feels like, anyway, nowadays. Can I find it, you're speaking a lot from the perspective of you as a leader.
Yes.
And what you're saying you have to change, or what the consequences are of what the life you've been living, the way you've been leading to that point. And you started when you were first introducing what you'd been up to and what you looked at. One of the things that you mentioned is culture. And that's, Peter and I can talk for hours on culture without necessarily defining it. I don't think we know how to define it in 2 sentences yet, even though we've discussed it a lot. But I'd love to understand your insights. Like when you look at culture and you describe that you didn't recognize the culture and you knew you had to change it, or there was a realization at some point that you have to change it. And I think you're hinting at some of those things.
Yes.
Now, culture is what Peter and I spend a lot of time talking about culture, working with organizations, trying to outline how leaders influence culture. But it's also intangible. It's on the one hand, you can always spot it. On the other hand, you cannot measure it. There's something very weird about that. What's your kind of guidance to leaders in terms of culture in their organizations?
Oh, Dave, I'm right there with you, because anytime I ask leaders to like, well, can you define your culture? It's like, well, it's there. We just know it's there. It's kind of like air, right? Like we know it's here. Obviously we know when it's not there. We know when air's not there. I mean, we're dying. But it was culture. And then the way that I found culture to be defined and the way that I saw it work for me as well, the way that we think, the way that we interact, and the way that we act, right? I mean, the way that we interact with one another is the way that we take action together, is the way that we think. And that goes again to fulfill the three things as a business. What are we doing? Well, we're executing a strategy, we're navigating crisis, and we are seizing on unexpected opportunity. So that's going to require the only way that we can do that, and you probably heard that, knowing the culture from I think it's Mr. Peter Drucker that said that culture eats strategy for breakfast any day.
Absolutely.
So
Kind of talked about that.
yeah, so I mean, if you think about culture is what is going to sustain, right? I mean, it's how we think together. I mean, how do we think is uh, for the best way I've been able to describe it, and once I understood it, is like Hannah, I don't make any decisions outside of me. I mean, my character. Well, same thing with culture. An organization makes no decision outside of its culture. Is the culture to an organization is like character to a person, is what they're known for. So everything that happens inside an organization is happening inside the culture. If we like it, the culture is sustaining it. If we don't like it, this culture is also sustaining that. So when for me realizing that, hey, I didn't like that we were so critical with each other. I didn't. Well, what was the culture? What were we celebrating? I mean, what were people getting rewarded for? What was the behavior that we were supporting? What was the behavior that we were encouraging, right? Because culture, again, is the way that we that interact with one another. Once I started seeing that, again, and the reason why I mean, I've been under a lot of bad leadership too. So a lot of my lessons came from like, and it's funny because it's like, well, I don't want to do that, and then you start seeing like, then you have your opportunity, you're shot at, it, and like, oh shoot, exactly.
Right. We're learning from that, right? So we're role modeling the experience that we've had, maybe.
Yeah. And I can't say there was a single time where I had a leader that say, hey, we got to work on the culture or we got to work on the values. I didn't. So I didn't really have a reference point. I just started feeling the symptoms of bad culture. Like I said, the critical spirit, the hostility, the resistance to change, the suspicion, the behind the meeting before the meeting talks, so that the
Yeah.
meeting was already planned, and then the after meeting from the meeting that I wasn't invited to. you know, so you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So that's the culture. So, because that means like, hey, we don't have transparency is not clear here, or there's no trust, or there's no opportunities for us to be able to have this candid, because maybe we all want to live this mask, this pretend thing that we're not, or secretly we're looking for jobs and we're silently quit, right?
Yeah.
So, I, as I was looking at it, you can tell the culture first of all by how you treat. I mean, it's like a family.
Yeah.
You how you treat one another. But even before that, it's already the immediate response to things. When there was an opportunity, are we rewarding? Are we celebrating? Or are we pointing fingers? That will tell you right away. That already tells you what the thought is. How do we approach things? So that's what I started looking at in learning about culture. With Maxwell, it's been one of my biggest tools is to build those positive cultures, a culture where we grow. It's not moving from goal oriented to growth oriented. And because being growth oriented is going to require failures. And it's how do we handle those failures? That's going to be a big part of the culture.
So you're just, Hannah, you're talking about starting in a culture where failure, as in a defect or some quality problem, capturing that before it goes out, which sounds to me like that's recognizing and positively understanding that failures happen and we're picking them up and catching them. So that sounds like it's working. And
Yes.
then you just closed out by saying what organizations need to do is learn to recognize and value learning. I think of learning, but failure. Is that
Layered learning.
what's the difference? It sounds to me like they're very closely related, but clearly one is not working as well as the other.
So let's just say when we started Six Sigma, it wasn't like, yay, everybody wanted to do that.
It's funny, the same thing happens with Agile introduction of Agile
Yeah.
DevOps.
And then they
But
realized
so
they've
my
actually got to do
experience-
some work to change, and then,
Yeah.
oh, actually, really? Oh, no, that doesn't sound fun.
Yeah, especially finding defects. I mean, first of all, especially with a department, you don't want to talk about that. So I think even just the embracing the whole concept that, hey, there are failures that happen on a daily basis. I mean, we're not the perfect place that we hope that we are, and it's okay. We didn't have the culture in place to accept that. So before we started, even with the Six Sigma, and although we did, I mean, we started, we weren't perfect. We started it. There was a point, like I told you, that it broke. The system broke because I had people leaving. So the system wasn't working. So although we did have that, it was the goal, right? The goal was catching the defects. The goal was improving the bottom line. The goal was keeping the doors open. So there's all these goals. Hey, goal is we're gonna get the profits up. The goal is to get the income. I had not made the change to move from goal to growth to where, yes, we're catching these, but how are we learning together? How are we debriefing? How are we treating
Yeah.
each other? How are we doing life together? How are we innovating in the middle of this? Yes, we're catching this, but how are we integrating this into maybe more ideas? Remember, I didn't have even a safe place, and this is even we can go into psychological safety on this. Did we have the psychological safety in place to be able to bring out those ideas? So a growth oriented culture is going to require that. It's going to require the training at leaders at every single level. In your frontline leaders, the ones that are dealing with customers, there was your VPs, midline managers, my goodness, senior level. All of those is going to require that. So when you become growth oriented, is saying, okay, but then when you do find failure points, when you do have defects, when you don't meet the sales goals, when you maybe did do a shipment that was completely wrong, how do you handle it? Because that's going to speak out more than whatever you say in your
Yeah.
walls and your value statement and your mission and your vision, right? So how do we in a culture that is growth oriented, we already know, I mean, we know those moments are going to happen. I mean, we're working with humans, we can create human errors. The machines create errors. People say that they don't. They do.
Well, I
They
think they'll
do.
be saying that they do quite a lot right now. So I
Yes.
think that's becoming more and more normal. But
Yeah, they do. They do.
mm,
And I mean, so when you're growth oriented, is not just, although we know conceptually we got to get
yeah,
to the goal and those things, but it's really the training and the embracing of how we're handling
yeah.
that every level of the organization.
So I just wanted to ask Peter, what's your experience been in terms of cultural change from top down or bottom up? Because what Hannah, you're describing this every level of the
Hmm.
organization, and I think one of the really hard things is knowing where to start that. So Peter, I don't know if you've got a ex-
Well,
experience.
we were talking about this a little bit recently too. One of the pieces is the leadership at the top has to be on board
Yes.
alignment because they can very easily the kibosh anything that they're not in agreement with. If they don't, if they're not aligned to the fact that change needs to happen, and then you will very quickly find that yeah, it might happen in part of the organization, but it's certainly not going to happen broadly across the organization. The You definitely need to have your, as we'd like to describe, the permafrost layer in the middle has to be aligned. And very often where that starts to fall apart is when we think of incentives. You said that this division over here has to make X amount $1 million, but they've got to make that same amount this year, but we need them to make changes. So
Hmm.
they're going to, if I already know as a leader that for me to meet my targets, I've got to do what I did the year before. So I'm just going to do what I did the year before. I'm not
Hmm.
going to take on all this new stuff and all this change because that might prevent me
Right.
meeting the target you've asked me to meet. So that you can automatically create friction between what they're being asked to do if you're not thinking through what is the alignment here, what is the direction change. You also need, of course, the bottom up support. You need people bought into the vision that this is how we're going to be operating. This is the change that needs to come into the organization. So yeah, leadership at all layers needs to come in and to change, and you need to also have alignment across those. Very often, or we've talked about this too. That alignment needs to be outside the performative drivers of the organization too. So this is where we talk about the alignment structure of the organization shouldn't necessarily directly correlate to performance. Performance is a measure of like, are we hitting our revenue? Are we hitting our targets? Are we managing our operational costs? Are we managing our risk? Are we looking after these aspects of the organization? That's how you measure performance. Whereas what we're aligned to try and achieve, are we hitting our next goal? Are we measuring towards? Are we moving in the right direction? Are we delivering on the targets that we're looking to deliver? these two things often are best measured independently of each other.
Mm.
There you go. Did I cover everything there, Dave? What would you add to that?
No, I'm trying to tie it together with Hannah what you were describing around the growth mindset. So we use these terms all the time, and a growth mindset. Of course, I never find a team that doesn't recognize themselves as being, first of all, growth oriented. Nobody says that's not for me.
No, don't never learn.
But there's something that is, and I love Hannah what you're describing, which is a big part of the growth mindset is how you're handling learning moments, failures, things that go wrong, the shipment that goes in the wrong direction, out to the wrong people, or whatever it might be, the software changes, the configuration changes that fail and cause an outage or some distraction for some time because somebody somewhere made a misstep.
Yeah.
How that is dealt with, how that is recognized, how it comes out is probably one of the primary things around the difference between a growth mindset or that calls out a growth mindset, because we have to feel safe for something to go wrong.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly difficult. If you're the CEO and a significant kind of order fails for whatever reason, it's costly to the organization. How do you balance the two things? Because it's easy to say we're growth oriented, really difficult in the moment to be growth oriented.
Oh, it's always difficult. I mean, that's why that's why we talk about resilience, right? I mean, if you don't have resilience, you won't be able to take those growth opportunities because and that's where you do have to build that resilience specifically for those times because things will go wrong. I mean, anytime you're gonna do something, I mean, if nothing's going wrong, you're not, we say over here, we ain't doing anything. Like if something's gonna go wrong, right? I mean, so you gotta build that resilience. So that resilience consistently has to be built. I like Peter what you said. Absolutely, it takes the top. It also has to have the support. For us, one of the things is, for example, project charters. I don't know if you're familiar with project charters, but every project charter had, you have your sponsor, you have your champion, you have the lead, you have who are the people there. But it brings a lot of clarity. And it's something that is not checked from just at the beginning and then at the end. There's like milestones, there's checkpoints. And I think a lot of times those problems that happen with the shipment perhaps or something else because there was no additional checkpoints because people get busy. And you just do your thing. I know I trust you. This whole I trust you is because maybe I'm not gonna be taking the time, and we're in a changing. I mean, fastly changing. We're changing the way that we talk with each other. We're changing like if it could be like if it was one day we're using Slack, the next day we're using Teams. Then we're the way that we disperse. Communications for a company. I mean, it's like every single week there's something that is changing. So in real time, and it is difficult, but you have to be committed to it. I remember I did have a problem with shipping. We were having very high return rates in our manufacturing facility. So guess what? Guess who was getting the grunt? How, okay, like, do you all not know how to do shipping? I mean, that's what you do. That's what we count on you to do. Come to realize that the real problem, once I taking a look at it again, utilizing once we had the Six Sigma principle, is that the shipping problem wasn't at the shipping point, it was really at the sales representative point. The solution was a very simple thing. We were having the wrong zip codes to the city. There was no, at the time, the software that would check, it would have been a very low cost solution to just put the software to check to confirm and verify the address before it goes to shipping. But that wasn't looked at. It also went from there, it went from the salesperson, went to customer service. Well, customer service just approved everything, approves. There was no second point of looking at it. However, the ones that were getting reprimanded, disciplined, and all that were the people in manufacturing. So I think as a leader, you have to realize, because it's easy, again, as a CEO, to trying to put all that pressure. We just need to get a whole new crew. We just need to change whoever is there. And you didn't really take a look at, well, what were the different inputs that were coming in here? And that's what I'm talking about, the learning moments, because for me, that was a huge lesson. It's like, okay, it wasn't even it was just an error here. And it wasn't just something that, of course, I don't expect my salespeople to know the zip code of every single city in the US, but what tool can I get for them? And that was a conversation that needed to happen with IT. Like, that's it. I talk to IT. Like, oh, okay, we can do that. Yeah. It's so much. Okay, let's do that.
Mhm.
You know, but again, there have been such chaos for a long
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
with that particular group. So I think with the leader, yes, they're costly mistakes. It was costing us a lot. But being committed to, okay, if you're growth committed, let's take a look at the inputs. What have we done to try to fix the problem? Okay, how do I know that they know? How do I know that this is how
Yeah.
this is supposed to be done? That question, how do they know? How do I know that they know? What are the markers? What are my milestones? What are the places? Where am I checking with people? Because I've seen it. I've seen it really easily. Oh,
Yeah.
you're the expert. Okay, here you go. Here's your baby. You go run with it. And then they do.
Yeah.
And then it
And
costs a
you live
lot.
with the consequences, right?
And then it's like, what were you thinking? Well, that's a little late to do that. I mean, like, you had
Yeah.
somebody that may have been super excited to be on the job. They had definitely the expertise. And now they're being felt like this big, because now whatever they've done has now cost the company so much reputation and all this stuff. But again, it's because there's a difference with that in how we delegate. And that's something that we do have to continuously learn,
Yeah.
not only what we say, but even the tools. How are we doing it? How are we communicating? How is this delegation happening? If it's through a project charter, if it's through communication that happens through Slack, if it's ClickUp, if it's all these things, that we have to have a clear way with every project, and it takes work.
There's a
I
piece there of the sort of like limiting the radius of damage that happens from mistakes that get made. There's one of the parts you were talking about there is that where you started from the point of view that, well, we do need the errors. Errors provide the opportunity for learning. So
Yes.
Yeah.
we if we don't see any errors, that means we're not learning and we're not pushing ourselves. It's a common topic used in SREs, the concept of an error budget. And the concept is, if you're not using your error budget, that means you're not pushing the system hard enough.
Hmm.
You're not, so you should be using up that error budget. You don't want to
Yeah.
exceed it, but the reason it's there is to provide you the ability to learn, to experiment, to see how should I move forward? What sort of things should I try next? But the goal is to limit the blast radius of any potential damage or change that you make, so that you don't end up destroying the entire company as a consequence of a single mistake.
Yeah, one of
Yeah.
the things I like is the failure mode, and I say, because you also understand some mistakes are very impactful, right, to the organization. Some are not,
Yeah.
and also their response may from a leader. Like, you don't need to be like on everything, but I mean, understanding the impact, and even the people matching the right work with the failure. It's a FMEA, the failure mode analysis, where we're able to see, if this fails, how do we catch it? If this fails, what is the impact to the overall
Yeah.
project? What's the impact to the overall mission and vision? Having a leader in any level, not just a CEO, the leader at every level, to really understand that helps with delegation. It helps also, what is the level of oversight that I need to have in certain projects. Which ones am I okay? I know there's going to be failures. I mean, it's just going to happen, but which ones am I okay? What's the level? Kind of like, if we're going to do the stock market, I mean, like, what's the percentage you're willing to lose, right? You already know. If you have an unlimited, you already know, hey, if I lose $1,000 here, I'm okay with that, but you already have your cap. This is the maximum. It
Yeah.
doesn't go beyond that. Well, we treat it the same way. This is my cap, okay? I know there's gonna be, some range here and there, but using it the same way, so that I am able to address those failures that have the big impact, or I'm able to quickly respond and give direction to where it needs to go in a timely manner at that when it's happening.
Yeah, accountability and agency, to the pieces that you get into there.
I've really enjoyed your example, Hannah, as you're going through that, because it actually speaks to the importance of psychological safety at the leadership level as well as at the team level. In that, if you're in charge of manufacturing and you have this error within error budget or outside of error budget that's coming in, I know of a lot of organizations where you cannot afford to effectively show weakness at that management level, because nobody on the other side of the aisle, like in customer service or in sales, pre-sales and sales, is going to put their hand up and say, hold on, right, you're shipping to an address that we are capturing or modifying. Let's explore this. Maybe the error isn't there, it's here. And that takes that is not an easy place for a leader to be, to say, maybe it's my team. And so I really, because this growth mindset is a tough one to get to, but like I said, we can all agree to it until we have to put it into action, and then it gets very difficult. And I've felt that coming to the point where we go, okay, no, we really need that psychological safety. And we often, when we talk of psychological safety, it's often, how do I create it in my team? It's the natural, it's maybe an assumption, but it's very different to say, how do we make sure that the leaders, us as, powerful, influential leaders in our organization with our own responsibilities and goals and so on, how do we have enough psychological safety that I'm open-minded enough to say, Peter, what you're experiencing, maybe it's coming from my team, instead of just saying, obviously it's not my team. My team are amazing, but Peter's team. We'll talk about that a different time. It's a different thing. It's a very natural, or at least it's very difficult to break those boundaries.
Yeah, you get very defensive because especially if you've tried, and after you've tried a couple of times. Yeah, you just constantly get shut down. Eventually, it's like, okay, I'm just going to look after my world, and the rest of you just go do whatever you do, because it's my space now.
Yeah. So this is where we're like, oh, then why can't we all just get along and talk to each other?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
But so reality is true. I mean, we just need to be able to talk to one another. I can't tell you how many companies I go still, although we all know silos are not good. They're siloed. Yeah. Of course. I mean, literally, even to like the department store, they don't know what happens outside of like their little place right there. They have no clue. Yeah. And it's like, you work here, like you're here, like they have really like, no, this is my one spot, this is all I know, that's it. Like, so it's very siloed still. So I would say a couple of ways. Well, one that I see 360, when you, as far as psychological safety, when you get the evaluation, when you get to see, what your direct reports think of you, what your peers look for you. And that's something that we started implementing too. And then, your supervisor, your senior manager, whoever's there, because that starts building on it. It's not enough, but it's a great start. The other one I highly advocate all the time. I mean, the cross-functional groups, right? I mean, we do that all the time. The work, we work with cross-functional groups, but how much time do we, outside of debriefing a project, which should be a part of it? I mean, how much time do we advocate to or have to debrief those projects? But that would be another good practice with cross-functional groups. But the other one that I really like is the total quality management groups, right? Where you have a quality group where you have different representatives from each place, and it's not always the same. I mean, like where you get to vote, where it has to feel like, hey, this is an honor to be able to participate in that. Again, to get the conversation started, because that's where it boils down to. It's like when you start listening, it's like, okay, well, this is how we deal with it, or this is what we're doing, and you start finding the quality issues in there. But having that, any size business, or having meetings specifically for that, and you have to. I mean, you have to, because either change is going to happen, right? I mean, there's change that happens to us. There's change that we go and do. Better one is the one that we go and do. It's more fun, right? Sure. Instead of like responding to everything else. But that's the truth of a leader, right? I mean, a leader has to see things faster. A leader has to be able to see things further away. So this is something for also that visionary leader that we need to have, because you see things that are coming down the pipe, and those conversations very much need to be talked to with the cross-functional teams, with the different functions of the business. And even if they're not the people that are only, I mean, we're talking about your main contract workers, your main vendors, people that can start talking into what are the solutions, what are some of the things that are coming up, some of the changes.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Hanna. It's a fantastic conversation. I think we're sort of getting to the towards the end. So at this point in our conversations, and really like to sort of wrap it up with a point from each of us. And since you're the guest, you get to go first. So what would you like our listeners to take away from this?
Oh, well, I think the last part, the importance of the psychological safety is a big deal. Having support and gain support, something that my mentor says, John Maxwell, is that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And you can be influential wherever you're at. You don't have to have the position. You don't have to have the title. You just have to have the will to be an influential person. And we need more people in the business and the organizations to raise up and use your influence. Because when you use that influence, you will be able to help create the psychological safety. You will be able to help and advocate for your team and advocate for the projects and advocate for your clients, the people that you want to see. And so, especially in the time of uncertainty. So for me, 100%, wherever you're at, whatever position you're in, you are always and can always use your influence, be a person of influence, and that makes you a leader wherever you're at.
Awesome. I like it. Dave?
You're risking this. Normally I steal your idea. Let's see if I'm stealing your idea again. So I'm just going to touch on a phrase, Hanna, that you used right at the end of the conversation we were having, which is total quality management. And I mention that because what I've felt and this conversation has just helped remind me of the many giants on which we stand on the shoulders of. And there's not one giant we're standing on the shoulders of. There are many over decades and decades. And I mentioned total quality management because I work in Agile, DevOps, transformation, digital transformation, and that's built on its own top of Lean. And of course, total quality management is one of those founding principles that fed into Lean. Yeah. There is so much we can learn by looking backwards at some of those giants that we've been just hinting at in this conversation. I just think that's a great reminder to say it isn't, current state isn't always the only place to look.
I think that's a very good point. The number of times I've walked in and had conversations with organizations and they're effectively reinventing something that has been around for like 40 years, as if just came across, oh well.
Yeah,
but good. At least you're moving forward. You're learning, and let's build on that. Here's some ideas that might help build on that you can maybe start from, and maybe accelerate your journey there. I think it was a great conversation. There's a lot of pieces there that we covered a lot of different topics. I like one of the pieces we were touching on there around I always hate saying celebrate failure because really what it is what can I learn from this? The focus on the work is a critical part of this. Like when we see this a lot in operations, and of course Dave knows I'm always likely to talk about operations at some point. But in an operations role, one of the worst things you can do is yell at people when something goes wrong, because apart from them already being annoyed that something went wrong, now you're not really even helping at that point. So understanding so why did this happen? So we can understand what the work is and what could we do differently. And potentially, is there something that needs doing differently? Or is this just a completely anomalous case? Like, is this part of a pattern? Are we looking for other ways in which the work might be going on? This type of analysis that needs to which focuses not on the people involved, but focuses on the work and how the work is happening. So I think that's an important part of it. Well, awesome. Thank you very much, Hanna. It's been a pleasure. And Dave, thank you as always. And look forward until next time. And
Hanna, thanks a lot for the conversation. Peter, always a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you both. I loved it.
You've been listening to Definitely Maybe Agile, the podcast where your hosts, Peter Madison and David Sharrock, focus on the art and science of digital, agile, and DevOps at scale.